Hello, everybody, and thanks for tuning in this week. Got a great guest coming on tonight. She's been on my show previously, and we're going to be talking about her new book, When the Bright Moon Rises, The Awakening of Ancient Memories. And so I'm going to be talking for the next 35 minutes about her book and the work that she does. And so let me bring on Dean Merriam and onto the show, and everybody welcome her. Hi, Dena. How are you?
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, most definitely. And so, just to kind of point out real quick, you were on the show previously about your previous book, The Untold Story of Sita, an empowering tale for our time, and now we're talking about your new book. So, I guess I'll just throw out a very general question. Can you just tell us about this project and how it came about, and how this book, came into existence?
Well, I'm a student of history, and so I've been very active in the whole climate movement, and know that there have been previous times when the ice melted and the oceans rose. So I was doing a lot of meditation on what that time was like in our collective history. About 11,000 BCE, glaciers began to melt, and the whole landscape of the planet changed. The oceans rose 400 feet, a lot of migrations, and so there was a lot of dislocation, but also positive changes. The human communities, forests began to grow. There were not a lot of forests before then, and the human communities began to settle around the rivers because there were a lot of rivers now. So all the early kind of human societies were settling around there were river cultures. And so I was doing a lot of meditation on that. And then I was in India, and I suddenly found myself drawn back in time to when these first societies were being formed in India, which along the Saraswati River, which had just been formed, from the melting of the glaciers. And it was considered a very sacred river because it was drawing a lot of the sages, and that's when the sacred Vedas were given. And so I was trying to get back into that state of consciousness of mind. What was that civilization like? And as I was doing that, the story unfolded. Now, people always ask me, are these past life memories? I experience them as past life memories, but I could be channeling somebody else's memories, so I can't, all I could say is that the experience was very real to me. I was back in time. I was seeing what I wrote about. I was living those lives. I talk about several different lives in this book. And, a lot of my work is about understanding the law of cause and effect. It's always been a given to me that we keep coming back. And as long as we're still having desires and ambitions and things we want to do and patterns to resolve, we take new bodies, right? But what determines what comes into our life? What are the causes that lead to what the current conditions, the people that we're with, the work that we're with, our financial situation? All of these come from causes initiated in the past. So that's been the study of all my works. And in this book, I do go through several different lifetimes of this one character and show how things begun in one life find fulfillment in another. And time is of no consequence. Thousands of years can pass before events began in one life begin to find their fulfillment in another life.
Mm-hmm. So that kind of leads you into the book. And then so you bring up cause and effect and karma. So basically meaning something could have happened in a previous life thousands of years ago, and then the effect isn't being experienced until, on a timeline scale, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years later.
It can be, there's no rule that every thought is energy, right? So every thought or action has a residual motion. It has a return to it. So it's like a law of physics. You put in every energy put out, it has a return. And that's in all the faith traditions. You reap what you sow. Sometimes it's sequential. You do something in one life, it shows up in the next life. If you have a difficult relationship, if you've got a thought pattern, a way of behavior, a pattern, a habit, it shows up again and again until you break that habit, break that way of thinking, break that way of behaving.
Right.
But it can also lay dormant until the conditions are ripe. I always say there's no judgment, there's no punishment. We are the drivers of our own ship, so to speak. But it's all for our own learning. I mean, everything that happens to us is for our own awakening, our own learning. So if it's in your interest to postpone certain effects until a time when you can really benefit or grow or change course, then things can be postponed. So it's very complex. I mean, what I've learned, the little that I understand about this law of cause and effect, is that it's extremely complex and yet beautiful in that it's the universe's way of seeking equilibrium. Universe is always seeking a state of balance, of equilibrium. And so all energy put out has to return in some way. And so the more we can understand this, the more we can take charge of our life and really consciously shape the future instead of unconsciously repeating patterns that will come to us again and again. The goal is to become more conscious of our direction, so that we can shape where we want to go. What do we want to be in the future?
So a lot of it's just, based on what I believe as well is soul growth. We are out here experiencing, and through our decisions, through this cause and effect, which would make sense about it being very complex, because it's, when you think about energy and this whole vast experience that we're having out here, for our human brain, it is very complex. To the cosmic brain, it's probably, easier for it to explain or comprehend than, for our human brain to comprehend. With that being said, what would you consider, because, a lot of people have different theories on God or deities, and within this consciousness of all these past lives or experiences, how would you define deities or God?
Well, I mean, I think that there's one universal mind, right? One cosmic consciousness that we have many names for. In the West, we call that God. In the East, they would say maybe Satchidananda, ever conscious, ever new bliss, or Brahma Brahma, the original source. Some people use the word source, original cause. But then within that vast world, the vast world that is, I mean, we see the physical universe, but there are other dimensions, what we used to call the celestial world. Now scientists will call other dimensions which our eyes can't perceive, which our ears are not trained to hear. We're very limited scale in our perceptions, our human sense perceptions. But within those realms, there are beings of, the word in Sanskrit for deva, which is equivalent to God, means light being. They're beings of light. They don't have physical dense bodies. They have bodies of light, and yet they have forms. And, there are many, many different kinds of beings in those other dimensions. I mean, the universe is beyond what our human brain can conceive. But even the physical universe, to really understand the vastness of the physical universe, is mind-boggling. And they say the different dimensions are even larger than the physical universe. So it's as if that the way to understand it is through the intuitive mind, not the rational, logical mind, which, can't quite grasp things that are that immense, things that we can't touch and feel. But intuitively, and I think throughout the ages and in all parts of the world tradition, people have come in contact with, you might call deities, light beings, and the ones that we consider to be at least benevolent are the ones that help us in the awakening process. And the first part of the book, the Bright Moon Rises, begins in Vedic India, and then moves to China, where the story is completed. But in the Vedic India, which is considered to be a higher age, almost like the Garden of Eden before the consciousness became confined, they could see the deities. And even in Western scriptures, you could see angels. People could see Gabriel or Michael. So I think that all traditions have that memory of a time when we could actually see these beings of the higher order. And even if we can't see them, we can feel them. We can intuitively feel their presence. I mean, how many times have we been spared some catastrophe? You feel like just a divine force comes in and gets you out of the way of danger. And so there are many guides and helpers. Everybody has them. Mm-hmm. Some of us are more conscious of these guides and helpers. Some of us call upon them. Right. But whether you're conscious or not, they're there. Everybody has beings who are working for the awakening of consciousness for our own spiritual progress.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a very good point too. It's like, do you think this thought just popped into my head that all these different ancient cultures saw them maybe differently? The different aspects of God, but they saw them, or they saw the celestials, or they saw the angels, or whoever they saw. And do you think that God or consciousness appears to a person as they see them based on who they are? Like a man in China is going to see it differently than a man that was in England, in ancient times, just because of based on their culture and their different experiences or their different ways of thinking in those cultures.
I think that's true. I mean, I have heard a sage say that when you die, the Christian will see Jesus, the Muslim will see Muhammad, the Hindu will see Krishna, or whichever one of the manifestations. I mean, there are different manifestations of this one consciousness that can take innumerable forms. I mean, there's an infinite number of forms that the consciousness can manifest as. And so I think that whereas in the Western context, these higher beings may appear with wings, in the Eastern context, they appear just as light bodies. So I think depending on, I mean, that's the beauty, the cultural diversity, is that we're talking about the same phenomenon, but we describe it differently.
Yeah, I think it comes down to really, it's very interesting. And then we, as a culture, have judged other people based on how they see it, but they're seeing the same thing, just in calling it differently, seeing it maybe manifest differently for them. But it's from the same consciousness. And that's very interesting, all the things we've done to ourselves. And with that being said, some would say that everything has happened exactly the way it should.
Exactly. It's happened. But the interesting thing in writing this book is that time just became irrelevant. So things that happened several thousand years ago, you can be back in that moment. I mean, the whole concept of time I had to question, linear time. And that's a hard thing for the rational mind to get around. But when you have memories from thousands of years ago, that does something to your brain. When you realize, I was in a body with a personality with a name a few thousand years ago. And so, somebody asked me recently, how far back can you go? Well, that's a good question. How far back? I mean, how far back have we been around,
Yeah, that raises a question. Like, I've had that asked before. Well, how far back can you go? And the other question is how many lives can one soul live? And I'm like, I don't really think there's an answer to that. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think there's one formula. I think it's different for everybody. And the beauty of our story is that each person's story is unique. We each have, I mean, the one thing that's common is that we pass through many, many different cultures and forms and religions, and we get to experience it all. We're rich, we're poor, we're this, we're that. We get a variety of experiences so that we can expand our awareness and learn different things. But each person has their own unique story, and that's the beauty of it. But I think we go back tens of thousands of years, maybe hundreds of thousands of years. I was once asked how far back they go, what they can remember, and they said they remember all the human lives but not their animal lives.
Mm. Yeah, and then some people would argue and say they were never an animal. I'm like, well, I think we're a lot of experiences. So, but you know, I was like,
a long time ago. It was a very long time ago.
I'll just be like, you do you.
Yeah.
So, Linda put in a comment, says, yes, I have numerous interactions with helper beings I couldn't see, yet I knew they were there helping me. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I think that even if you can't, I mean, I have that too, where sometimes I do see the beings, but I see them not in the external field. I see them internally. So I don't know how to explain that in any other way. But I think most often it's our intuitive sense that we know that they're there. I mean, we know that they're there. And that's the main thing, is that we can have some kind of conscious exchange with them, whether we can see them with our physical eyes or not.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, in the ancient Vedic clans, you know, they were ruled by women. Is there a message in the book for women in the book when we're looking?
Well, this particular society that I talk about had a tradition of women being the chief. It doesn't mean that all societies in that area, but this particular clan was ruled by women. Mm-hmm. And I think it was a time when there was really less gender differences in terms of roles. The sister of the main character was one of the main sort of defenders, warriors of that clan. And so I think that it was a time when there were just, I mean, whatever your skill was, that's what you did. Whether you were a man or woman, there wasn't a distinction really. And I think, of course, then the second part of the book, which takes place in China, is with a woman poet who's a rebirth of the initial character, and married to a very famous. And that's all historical. That part of the story is documented in history. And I think she had a lot of trouble coming into, it's already a different time, 700 CE, where women did not have the same liberties that they had earlier. And she really struggled to find her voice as a woman. He was a prominent poet. She was also a poet, but unknown. And I think we can see the difference in the time periods, where during the declining times or the progress of the millennia, women sort of lost their place in society.
Mm. Yeah, what do you, you know, I've done a lot of studying on that, as far as, especially about, you know, Western culture. Where do you think that happened? I mean, to me, there was a lot of stuff that goes back thousands of years, even into, you know, into the Middle East and stuff like that brought that. But what happened where the women in a lot of places were in balance and in their cultures, and in some ways, you know, some areas that they were the war chiefs and some Native American cultures. What happened in our society or our culture that made, you know, women?
You know, as society developed, you know, and in these earlier societies, there were no wars, there was no collective violence, there was not greed. People lived very simply and happily with whatever they could get from the forests, from whatever they could grow. I mean, there was just not this concept of domination. And it's when this concept of domination entered the human psyche, which was to dominate nature, to shape nature as we wanted it, to dominate the animal kingdom, men to dominate women, to conquer other nations, to be the dominant. You know, you see this with the rise of empires, right. Starting at around 1000 BCE, or 1500, or maybe 2000 BCE, with the real rise of empires, and then the concept of conquest. And so I call it like a domination mentality, which we're struggling to outgrow now. You know, I mean, we're struggling as a human species to outgrow this need to think one part of the human society is better than another. Economic domination, struggling to get over the gender issues, and then domination of nature, which is the real pressing thing for us now. We've so dominated nature that we're destroying the very life systems that we need to survive. And it's the concept of domination. We can do whatever we want to the earth. It's just there for our use and misuse. We can do whatever we want, and that's the domination mentality. We go into other countries and conquer them if we want. We want something that they have. So we've got to outgrow that as a human species.
Do you think it's I had somebody say to me years ago, and I really believe that this is true, that we have to get back into our hearts, and not like meaning the energetic center, so to speak. And you think that when you think about domination, that's not a path of the heart. We've lost that center of being in the heart, and that energy center. And so do you think that's kind of what's happened over the thousands of years? And now we're starting, like you mentioned, struggling to get back into there, but that's where the energy is going. And
I agree, totally. I think we've been functioning at the rational mind has become predominant, which is also why we've become such a materialistic society, very focused on material, but material gain does not bring happiness. So we've associated well-being and happiness with having, and you want more and more and more and more, right? Which is what's destroying so much of those. So to get back to the heart, where happiness is in feeling love, in giving love and being loved, and feeling care and caring for the earth and caring for what happens to other societies and other people. You're right. It's shifting from that rational mind into the heart, into the intuitive faculty, into the heart.
Yeah, I think there's always, but I've seen it change. It's interesting. I started studying, years ago, but really started getting into my spirituality 23 years ago. And I'm noticing when I was young, in my 20s, telling people about reincarnation, or even down to a pendulum, people were like, that stuff is crazy. And you'd find the one that would be like, yeah, I believe sort of, and then I think. And now these days, you hear people talking about it, and it's not especially reincarnation. Do you think that is a part of what people are waking up to, a new consciousness, I guess is the way to put it?
I think the word or the concept of karma has become very mainstream. People talk about karma all the time. And I think that the more people, there's this thing with the 100th monkey, if a certain number of beings in a species gained a certain ability, then it kind of spreads automatically. As more and more people regain their memories of even just a little bit about a past birth, it could become common throughout the human community. And I think that's what's happening. I meet so many people who say, yeah, I've had this flashback to that life, and I know this person is my previous birth. And I heard a statistic like 40% of the American Christian community accept this concept of rebirth. So I think that there's definitely an awakening going on here in our country, with more people doing contemplative practice, whether you call it meditation or contemplative prayer, with more and more people looking inside and doing some kind of reflective practice. I think it's doing something. It's not having no effect at all. It's having an effect.
Oh, yeah. Definitely, you can see it, because especially when I see, tonight I went to a meditation on the beach. The guy was doing a crystal bowl concert on the beach, and I saw more men there, and about half and half, men and women.
That's good.
And you didn't see that 20 years ago.
No, yeah.
It was almost all women, and so that's a big breakthrough as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah. I wanted to show real quick your websites, real quick, and I have them coming up on the bottom there, but I really just wanted to kind of show, especially this one, the Global Peace Initiative, which is gpiw.org.
Yeah.
So everybody, and Merriam is the founder of the Global Initiative of Women, our Global Peace Initiative of Women. And then also, this is your personal website, Dena Merriam. And so, definitely, check her websites out. And they are in the description of the show, but also they're, scrolling at the bottom of the screen as well. So it's, just want to make sure I pointed that out. And, and then there's a comment. We have a couple comments here. Daniela says, Dominion, a true lack of respect for the planet and all species.
Yeah, that's true. Domination. Yeah. That has, we have to shift. I mean, we have to work on shifting that mindset.
And Linda says, fascinating discussion. Feminine energy is returning. It is that we had to take turns with male energy is it that we had to take turns with male energy in the past? The female is the nurturer, and we are returning to the heart. Oh yeah, so maybe we switched energy to experience the balance.
Yeah, I think it's about a balance. I mean, that's what we need now. It can't be one or the other. We have to be in balance, because both energies are needed for our individual and our collective health.
Yeah.
And I want to just say that the Global Peace Initiative of Women is not an organization just for women. It was just founded by a group of women. That's how the name evolved. But basically, we work on the awakening of consciousness. It's men and women together with a focus on the heart energy. And so it's a women-led organization, but it's half of our network are men, and it's important to us. Creating the balance is what we have to do now.
Absolutely, and that's absolutely beautiful. And I just want to point out, remember, the name of the book we've been talking about is When the Bright Moon Rises: The Awakening of Ancient Memories. And where would they find that? Would they find that on your website and Amazon? Amazon.
I mean, if you go into Amazon and just type in my name, Dena Merriam, then all the books will come up, and that's the latest. So just go into Amazon and type books by Dena Merriam, and it's basically a love story. It's a love story of the deities for us for the deities, between human beings who don't find fulfillment in one life and find it many lifetimes later. And that's a whole nother discussion, how really the foundation of the universe is love. And that's what keeps it going. And so that's what we have to tune into. That's the energy that we have to tune into.
It's interesting you bring that up, and I totally agree with you. And I've found that in the recent years, there are certain people that try to poo-poo the idea of, because spiritual people say, it's all about love. And I think that there is a certain group of people that have a misunderstanding about what love is.
Exactly.
They think that love means I accept everything. And they think that love means that, I should let somebody walk all over me. And I'm like, and that's not what love means at all.
No, there's a fierceness to love. I mean, in order to, when there's harmful action, this question comes up a lot. That what do you do when you're facing a harmful action or a being who's perpetrating suffering? One has to, out of the love, one has to act, because you're looking for the well-being of the whole. And if well-being is being harmed, you have to protect it. That's the call of love, is to protect the well-being of the individual and in the whole.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And so, Dena, any last things that you would like to say to the audience before we wrap up tonight? Any last thoughts?
Well, I want to say that the more we reflect on our life, the more we can take control of it. Looking into your past helps you understand your current conditions, so that you don't feel that it's arbitrary or that you're a victim, but that you know that it's there. Everything that comes to you in life is for your own growth. And the more you can deal with the challenges, the better you can shape your future, because we all have a future. And so we want to be able to consciously shape it. And so I think it's the inner reflection that can teach us a lot about how we can overcome our challenges in life and how we can shape the future we want.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Everybody for watching, thank you for watching, for whether you're watching live or you're watching later on. Also to remember that this is going to be on the LA Tribune TV on Roku TV within a day, about a day or so. I usually take to get up there. And then next week, tune in. My friend and business partner Tina Michelle will actually be my guest next week, and we will be talking about angels. And so it should be a good conversation. Again, every Wednesday at 10 p.m. live, and then on the Roku TV for LA Tribune TV. So everybody, much love, and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, Jeremy. Wonderful to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tina. It was a great pleasure.